Um, this is a presentation which some of you have already seen me do, right? At Pure or Further East or Virtuoso and things like that. But it is a little bit, just a little bit more, let's say, I dig deeper into certain things simply because I have a little bit more time. And it's also going to be recorded as well, so you can always come back to it. We'll send out the link to the recording tomorrow. What it is basically it is an overview of Sri Lanka. I mean, it's not intended to be too much of a deep dive, but it's intended to sort of give people an overview of the country. Now, some of you I know already have been, from the list I can see some of you have been here a ton of times, and you know your way around. But for people that don't know Sri Lanka all that well, I think it's quite useful because it shows you sort of how to plan an itinerary, how travel planning actually works at the basic level here. But perhaps the most important thing is that what I'm trying to do with these types of presentations and this approach is to give Sri Lanka context, if you like, is to give you the ability to have a conversation with your clients about why rather than what, if you like, not so much about where am I going to stay or what am I going to do, but start the conversation with why, what is the reason one should first of all bother with with the country, and second, why would I go there, why would I visit a particular part of the country, or what is it that's interesting and that's that's in a way that has maybe something to do with me. It could be it could be whatever you do in life as a profession. It could be what's happening with your life right now with the kids and so on and so forth. But Sri Lanka is a country that has, as you all know, has thousands of years of history. And even though it's small, there's just so much to it. There's just a ton of different areas with different climates, different ethnicities, different religions, different histories, if you like, different cultural traits and expressions, and of course the fauna and the flora and all the history, the colonial history that we have, as well as the ancient history. There's a lot to it. So there's a lot of things that you can, in a sense, work with because there's really something for everybody here, in the sense that there's just a lot of content, if you like, to work with within a small country. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go around the country. We're going to do your classic trip to Sri Lanka, and we're going to touch on all of these themes. And your classic trip to Sri Lanka, your classic 2-week trip to Sri Lanka, is really a trip that takes you around the country like this, where you're seeing on the map, to the cultural triangle first, and then down to Kandy, and then up into the hills, and then down around the coast. So we'll go through some of that stuff, but with a twist, if you like. And then I'm going to take you to the East Coast as well, because the East Coast has really opened up in the last few years, and it really has a lot more to offer. So it's worth sort of taking a look as well. So let's get going with ancient history and archaeology. Now, okay, so one of the things I've done as well is just try to show you the locations and tell you a little bit of the stories, if you like, through some of my favorite photographs as well. This, I know there's a bit of a delay. There could be about a 3 or 4 second delay in the picture, so forgive me if I'm talking about something that suddenly is not there and appears. But here is a picture of the cultural triangle. What you're actually seeing here is a you're seeing this guy, this yogi, sort of meditating, and the mountains that you see there on the horizon are Ritigala. Some of you would have heard of Ritigala, and Ritigala is an ancient monastery, and Ritigala is not a place that many of our clients visit, because it's not in the top sort of 2 or 3 places that you would visit in the cultural triangle. But it's just a testament to the fact that in this particular area of Sri Lanka, there is archaeology for generations. It's not me saying this. There's a very well-known archaeologist friend of mine, Ashley DeVos, who said to me, look, Miguel, there's archaeology for generations. There's hundreds and hundreds of archaeological sites, even that have not yet been properly explored. So what happened here? What's the story of this place? That just has so much by way of old temples and cities and the ruins of ancient cities and monasteries and palaces and things like that. The largest stupas in man-made stupas in the world. And what is it about this place? How can we put it into context? And I think the thing that in order to put the cultural triangle into context, you need to look down, not up. You need to look you need to appreciate the fact that there are thousands of lakes, and they're man-made lakes, and these lakes are the secret, if you like, to the whole story of the cultural triangle, because the irrigation systems that this ancient civilization developed were the most advanced in the world. And they were able to retain, manage, and use water very efficiently. And the result of this is a civilization that flourished, over 2,500 years ago, and left us with 4 UNESCO World Heritage sites today, right? Plus all these other archaeological sites, and with all the wonders of Sri Lanka's ancient heart. It really is Sri Lanka's ancient heart. And when putting it into context, I think one of the things that I would recommend is to sort of appreciate the fact that it is a land that has where our great grandparents, right, not ours, but it's like, the Sri Lankan great grandparents, this is their land. And so Sri Lanka is a very spiritual place. There's a lot of energy, so to speak. So let our clients connect with that energy, right? And there's ways to do that. It's not so much about ticking the boxes and going up, climbing Sigiri, taking a picture, and then going to the next place. I would say incorporate experiences like taking them to Pidurangala, which is this place that you see here, where you can see the sunset and the sunrise, and you can really appreciate the stars and the sun, and and really connect with that sort of spiritual side of the cultural triangle. There's, and on top of that, obviously you've got the sites and the places to visit, which are no doubt impressive. The cave temples and the remains of some of these ancient cities. In Polonnaruwa, for instance, which you're seeing a picture of now, this is the Temple of the Tooth, one of the temples of the Tooth in Polonnaruwa. Polonnaruwa is a classic example of where tourist traps, right? There's two or three different sites. There's actually 4 main places you visit when you visit Polonnaruwa, which is one of the ancient cities. And believe it or not, 90% of the people do it all the same way. And it takes very little effort to just take a detour and go around and take a track that takes you through the forest, surrounded by all this archaeology, and there is nobody there. And you walk from one place to the other. And it's just it's a place where when you're alone in these places, you really connect. I think it's much easier to kind of really resonate with ancient history when without the crowd, so to speak. Now that's why I put this picture here as well of this this girl meditating and yoga. This is in the cultural triangle as well. This is one of my favorite yoga retreats. I go there twice a year and spend a week. And I absolutely love it. And so that's the sort of angle I'd like to sort of put through. This is This is Bella, which is one of our favorite hotels. So just a little, I'm not going to talk too much about hotels in this presentation, but I'll show you a couple of hotels just to show you the sort of quality of hotels we have in the area. As far as experiences are concerned, I mean, the Cultural Triangle is, yeah, I mean, it's a place you go to see your archaeological sites and the UNESCO World Heritage sites, and that's how, you know, it's packaged, if you like, for the lack of a better word. But again, there's just a lot more to it as well, because it's full of wildlife. There's leopard there, even though the leopard are difficult to see, but there are leopard, elephants, and so on and so forth. Lots of monkeys. If you take a look at this picture, this is one of my favorite pictures, because this is a Lanka monkey, and this is Sunil from he belongs to a small community of researchers that live in Polonnaruwa, and they have been under the guidance of a very Dr. Dibitus, a very well-known German scientist. They have been studying the behavior of macaque monkeys for pictures of a film called Monkey Kingdom. I always recommend show Monkey Kingdom and let the kids see the film before going to Sri Lanka. Is a Lanka monkey, and if you look at the monkey on the side, he's actually a macaque. So you have this thing going on between the macaques and the Langas, you know. And when it comes to grooming, you know, well, you know, he definitely looks very groomed. So you know, it's another species doing the legwork. It's kind of fun. But I mean, this is one experience. Okay, so here's another site in the Cultural Triangle. This is in Polonnaruwa. This is beautiful, and you know, like all this ancient history and you know, and spirituality. So that's you know, that's sort of my take on the Cultural Triangle. I didn't sites per se, but just remember there are four UNESCO World Heritage sites. There's at least, you know, more than a dozen other sites, minor sites, that, you know, we should take people to, and you know, get them starting the day by doing a bit of meditation and so on, and then you know, and then embrace that sort of the ancient Sri Lanka's ancient heart in that respect. Okay, so we're going to move to a little bit south now, and in the same spirit, in the sort of spirit of Sri Lanka's energy and spiritual energy, so to speak. Let's move to Kandy. This is a beautiful picture taken by my friend Jessica Guyot in 2002, and it's the Temple of the Tooth during the period. So Sri Lanka is 75% Buddhist, and Sri Lanka, you know, Sri Lanka is 15% Hindu, 7.5% Muslim, and 7.5% Islam. Sorry, Christianity. So it's very, you know, it's very you know, there's a multitude of religions and ethnicities and things, but it is 75% Buddhist. So, you know, and what we have here in Sri Lanka is, dare I say, you know, one of the, if not the most important pilgrimage site for Buddhists in the world, which is the Temple of the Tooth. Now, the Temple of the Tooth is a big deal. You know, it's a big deal, and people come from all over the world to see the Temple of the Tooth, from all over the Buddhist world, from Thailand, from Burma, from Japan, from China, and so on. Now, you know, of course, in the days of social distancing, well, it's not going to be one of those that, you know, is going to be easy to work with from that point of view. But having said that, it's probably one of the very few places, if not the only one, which we need to really concern ourselves with in that respect, because and you know, it is a place where you know, there are a lot of pilgrims, you know. Having said that, you know, there are other places in Sri Lanka, even Sigiriya sometimes sees lots of people coming together, but it's still different because it's not a closed space. But having said that, Sri Lanka is really, as I said, one of the countries, I think, which is going to emerge really, really nicely from this whole thing, because it's just a place where there's just not a lot of opportunity to be in locked in with crowds of people. But anyway, the Temple of the Tooth, what you don't see here is there's actually a church about 150 meters away, and then there's a Kovil 150 meters away, and then there is there is a mosque as well. So Kandy is a little bit of a microcosmos of Sri Lanka's cultures and ethnicities as well, and it is a testament to the harmony between the different religions and ethnicities. And I say that, and some of you might think, yeah, but what about from time to time there's inter religious issues, things like that. It is very, very rare. I have lived in Sri Lanka for 20 years, and frankly, even during the days of the war is misunderstood to a very large degree. It was not a religious conflict. It was not an ethnic conflict. It was a political conflict, and I have friends, Tamil, Hindu, Sinhala, Islam, all the different religions and ethnicities, and we all coexist very, very, very well in Sri Lanka. Anyway, that's a separate conversation, but Kandy is a testament to that, and one should really approach it in that respect as well. Galle is also a testament to that, and we should approach it in that respect as well, because Galle Fort does have those characteristics in the sense that everybody's there together, and that have been 4 years. But Kandy is very special in Sri Lanka because it's Sri Lanka's spiritual heart. If the cultural triangle is the ancient heart, Kandy is the spiritual heart in that respect, because people go there on pilgrimages. But it's also a very important culture in Sri Lanka because, if you like, within the country, the Kandyan culture, you'll hear a lot about Kandyans and Kandyan culture, Kandyan dress, Kandyan drumming, Kandyan. When you get married, you dress up as a Kandyan. Kandyan drumming is the type of drumming that everybody recognizes as a sort of the Sri Lankan traditional drumming. Which is meant to draw away the spirits and things like that. But also Kandyan handicrafts and things like that. So Kandy is an important, very important subculture, if you like, or culture within Sri Lanka that is very expansive, if you like. It dominates, if you like. And part of the reason is because they were really the ones that held their ground against the Europeans when the Europeans try to conquer Sri Lanka, work with Sri Lanka. The Portuguese never conquered the Kandyan kingdom. The Dutch also never conquered the Kandyan kingdom, and it was only the British in the beginning of the 19th century that managed to confuse everybody here in the Kandyan kingdom and managed to take over and pacify it. So for commercial reasons, and then the rest is history. But that's why Kandy is important, because they're mountain people, they're warriors, and they're very important in Sri Lanka. They define Sri Lanka in many ways. This is one of our favorite hotels in Kandy, which is the Kandy House. It is a Kandyan house. It's not a colonial house. So it comes from the days of the Kandyan kings. These are some of the most interesting people that I have come across in Sri Lanka along the way. And a lot of these eccentric, fun characters live in Kandy. When people say, well, what do we do in Kandy? I always say, well, there's actually a lot to do in Kandy, and a day in Kandy can be either your worst day in Sri Lanka or your best day in Sri Lanka, depending on how you plan it. And I'd say that's why all of you and ourselves, play an important role. And I think it's really understanding our clients and what might make them tick. And if it is meeting interesting people, there is actually a handful of really interesting people in Kandy. And why they all live in Kandy, I don't know, but it seems to attract this eccentric type of people, right? So this is Raj and Rudrani, and I always, I met this guy many years ago. He was meditating on a hill, and we became friends. Long story short, I thought that he's so out there that I thought, I'd love to bring some of my clients to kind of meet him, because he's definitely living in another dimension. So as you can see from the picture. So anyway, so that happened, and and so people go and spend an afternoon, an hour, a couple of hours with Raj and Rudrani, and have tea and talk about contemporary art or music and things like that. Another experience that is must in Kandy is the market, which again is an experience with people, tour operators, back in, when I started doing all of this, they never went to the markets because they felt it was really smelly, and they are really smelly. It's like, you've got, the fish going on and the meat going on, and, but it is what it is, and so it is wonderful. The photography in there is just mind blowing, and it's the real deal. So it is Sri Lanka full on. You end up sweating and kind of trying the exotic fruits and things like that. But the interesting thing about it is that not many people visit it, because for some reason, unless you tell the guide and we tell the guide to go, a lot of people just a lot of the other companies avoid it. This is Stephen Champion. Stephen Champion is amazing. I mean, this guy has lived in Sri Lanka for 40 years, and you see all those pictures. So he's a photographer that photographed Sri Lanka during the war, and then he's really nice. He's makes a mean cup of Ceylon tea, well worth spending a bit of time with him, and let him, through the photography, tell you a little bit about his experiences in Sri Lanka. He got himself into trouble quite a number of times because he was in places that he shouldn't have been. But he's got all of these stories, and yeah, he's well worth getting to know. Gunter, this is also another wacky character. Speaks Sinhala even better than the Sinhalese, and he's been here for a very long time. Loves his rice and curry, as you can see. And he's just wonderful, and he organizes these lunches for our guests, and we bring them there, and clients have private lunches, and he has a huge garden, married to a Sinhalese lady, and they cook for you, privately, and it's just really nice, and it's very funny, quite eccentric as well. This Professor Palipana, many of you, I think some of you know Professor Palipana, but I mean, I can't just praise him enough. But again, he was kind of plucked out of the botanical gardens, many years ago. He was running from pillar to post, scraping a living with some some tips and things. But he's the foremost authority on botany in Sri Lanka. He's taken all the royals around. He took the Mountbattens around. We had the Mountbattens here, and the descendants of the viceroy, and then and it was all a big deal. And he took them around, and he's just so funny. He speaks 3 languages, and he's the man to take you around the gardens, and he knows every leaf in that garden. So he was telling me about Coca-Cola, and and he picked up this nut, and he was going on about this nut is the actual nut that goes with the, it's the cola nut that goes with the coca, and then you get Coca-Cola. So he was telling me about all that. Candy and drumming. We've incorporated a few new experiences, so I thought I'd throw this one in as well. So if anybody wants to let the kids release a little bit of adrenaline and things like that, this is a good experience for them. We have a golf course in Kandy, so it's beautiful. We have 4 golf courses in Sri Lanka. Kandy's golf course is probably the most beautiful in terms of scenery. Very nice. Hey, little known fact is that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was filmed in the area, and I actually happened to trek the other day to try to find this stone where where the Indiana there, this tribe there had the Shankara stones, and it took me forever. I've been looking for it for years, I have to tell you, but I found it. It's actually about an hour away from Kandy, and then you have to trek up the mountain, and it's totally overgrown, but it's there. So another interesting film to see before people come to Sri Lanka. This is all those guys in those days. arriving. Okay, we'll move on to Ceylon tea. So I must accelerate a bit. I get slightly carried away. This is Santani, which is up in the Knuckles. We love the Knuckles. It's not the main area in the mountains, but we love it anyway. It's just much more off the beaten path. And Sri Lanka is, as I said, very spiritual, so well worth. This is also a place with a lot of energy. There's a wonderful mountain there called Hunaskiriya, and we like to send people here. Some of you have worked already with it. What's the story of the tea country? The story of the tea country is the story of first of all, it's a story of the British coming to Sri Lanka and deciding that they wanted to develop, all of the center of, they wanted to kind of plant. It was, they were planting and trading. So it's the story of saying, okay, what works, what doesn't, let's see. And so, as you all know, at the beginning of the 19th century, they came here with their machines. They came with their, it was the industrial revolution was in full swing, and they came here with their machines, so that they built their factories, and they started to produce first coffee and then tea, and then the rest is history, because Sri Lanka, as you know, is one of the top producers of tea in the world, and has such a great reputation in this regard. But it obviously is also the story of the people that came to work for them, because the Sinhala didn't want to sort of, the story, as the story is written, so to speak, is that they were finding it very difficult to get labor from the local population. So they went to India and they brought, they literally shipped over, hundreds of thousands of Tamils. From Tamil Nadu. And so it's the story of those people. It's a story of those people and their descendants. And, and so the story is, their culture and how, they express that culture in which is very different to the Tamils in other areas. And it's a bit of a micro, it's like a window into history, because nothing much has changed for those communities in terms of how they live and their culture and their festivals and things like that. And it's obviously it's a trekker's paradise. There are endless trails in the tea country. So in terms of what you do, right, it's really a trekker's paradise. Now, we have to push trekking, all of us, more, because Sri Lanka is not on the map as a trekking destination, simply because no one's really put it on the map. But it is, you can't have it better, because the trails they are all there. And you can now connect all these different little bungalows and things like that with trails. And so please ask us as well, because I have done a ton of walking in the tea country, and I've got GPRS coordinates for bungalow to bungalow treks, the whole works. In fact, I'm creating a 22-day walk across the tea country, similar to Camino sort of thing, and which you'll hear about in the future. But it really is a trekker's paradise. These are all pictures of trekking. And you've got these little bungalows. This is Haldemula bungalow, 3 rooms, really nice, just on the southern side of the tea country. My friend Giles's house. So it's, we're going, I mean, with all due respect for tea trails and some of the people that were there before, but it's now developed so much more. There's just a lot more on offer in terms of bungalows that have been restored and things like that. And it's a huge playground. This is Goatfell bungalow. That is Camellia Hills. That is Tea Trails, Tien bungalow, and this is Camellia Hills again. And so what you do is you pretend to if you like to live in the 19th century, go for a walk through around the plantation, get pampered at the bungalow by your butler, and have a wonderful high tea in the afternoon, play a game of Scrabble with the kids and by the fireplace, and and the next day you visit a tea factory and mix a little with the locals, maybe go down to the local village. That's the thing. If you want to get also, I mean, there's obviously it's important to go out into the field and see the plucking in place and have a go at plucking. There's also other things in the tea country. There are a lot of little small communities doing different things, little NGOs, little programs that people are putting together, and this is in Norelia. So there's a lot more to it. There's actually a whole portfolio of experiences in the tea country for you, and on our documentation. And the train, you have to take people on the train because, I know it's sometimes a bit complicated, but it's definitely well worth it because it's part of that story. Remember the context. The context is the Industrial Revolution, the people that came from India. That is the context. That is, what's happening. But the train is so much fun, and it's not a long train ride. It's a 2.5 hour, 3 hour train ride from Kandy up into the hills, maybe a little longer depending on where you're going, or from Norelia over to the other side. And there's actually a private carriage that we can do. Like this is this is the Viceroy Express. It's a private carriage. It's not expensive. And this is for a group of, 2 families coming together, and look, how much fun they're having. Of course, they're not mixing and mingling with the locals, so I always recommend your second class, even your third class. Obviously, this is one of those counterintuitive things that when you plan a trip for clients, it's like, I want to go in first class because you guys are a high-end operator and all of that. Yeah, no. Well, I prefer to think of ourselves as a, as a sort of conduit to sort of the real Sri Lanka, so to speak, as opposed to a high-end operator. But this is one of those examples because it's actually much more fun to go in third class or second class than it is to go in first. But if you have your own private carriage like this, that's fine because that's really nice, stylish. We can do lunch there. You can have your drinks and things like that. This is a picture of the Bogawantalawa Valley where the seaplane lands here. So it's another good way of getting around. This is down in Ella, it looks more like Bali. This is a beautiful paddy. Now, of course, it's totally nicely grown. And look at the waterfalls in Sri Lanka. I mean, my God, how beautiful is that? That's the Laksapana Fall. Look at these waterfalls. I don't think I've mentioned this to many people. Some of you guys, when you've met me, we haven't really talked about waterfalls, but there are some really spectacular waterfalls in Sri Lanka. And then, of course, we have rafting and so on. And to throw another film at you, this is Bridge Over the River Kwai, which was filmed in 1957, I think, here in Sri Lanka, and it won 7 Oscars. Don't quote me; it could be 6. Can't remember, but it's it's beautiful. The location, Kitulgala, is really, really nice. The kids love it. It's adrenaline, it's canyoning and rafting and the river, but it's really cool. Okay, let's keep going. So we go down south now. We're going to see our friends the leopards. Now, all of you know, I think Sri Lanka has the highest density of leopard in the world at Yala National Park. And that's one of those statements like, we have the Temple of the Tooth is the most important pilgrimage site for Buddhists in the world. Well, it's one of those great things that, cards you can pull out of your sleeve and say, bang, statement, It is actually the probability of seeing leopard is very high and it's getting better because there's more and more leopard. It's quite amazing. But in elephants is a different story. There's still a very significant elephant-human conflict in Sri Lanka. If you want to see wildlife, then go and see it in the wild, I would say. There's an elephant orphanage you may know of. There's also a Millennium Foundation, which is fine. We like the Millennium Foundation. We like the work that they do. A few things they could improve on, but we like it. But, you're going to want to take people out into the wild. Now, in Yala, we have some fabulous accommodation. Now you can see here's Wild Coast, and Wild Coast was built in bamboo, which is interesting because not much has been done in bamboo in Sri Lanka. Most, as you all know, in Bali, that they work bamboo really well, but here not so much. So we're very happy to see some new innovative structures coming out in bamboo. This is Chena huts, which many of you know of. So the accommodation is really fabulous. There's also, of course, the safari operators, and I didn't have the time to sort of throw in more examples, but there is very good accommodation down by Yala National Park. Your question is going to be, what about congestion? And I would say, okay, well, it's interesting because now maybe this whole COVID thing is going to force and, if you like, more rigorous regulation, even at Yala National Park, insofar as the vehicles and how they, we organize our safaris, and obviously in how the whole thing is managed. So, and if that happens, I'm going to I think that we should all welcome that. So there's also opportunities to see whales in the southern coast. So now I'm moving to the beaches. Take a look at some of these beaches. Sri Lanka has beautiful beaches. I mean, it's not Maldives and it's not Seychelles. Maybe I've never been to the Seychelles, but it has beautiful beaches. Some people say, well, well, maybe the water is not as clear as the Maldives, and that's simply because Sri Lanka's, the water, it's not coral, and the Maldives have a coral base, but in Sri Lanka there's quite a lot of sediment that comes down from the rivers. So sometimes the water is not that clear, but I mean, and look at these beautiful pictures. There's ample opportunity for snorkeling, we're an island on the Indian Ocean, a tropical island on the Indian Ocean. So, you can definitely tick that box. But having said that, Sri Lanka is more of a cultural destination, isn't it, for most of us, because it just has so much to it. As you know, many people combine it with the Maldives. This is our iconic stilt fisherman. It's very Sri Lankan. You can't, you can't get more Sri Lankan than this. Some people say, yeah, well, there's a place you stop along the way and it's a bit of a tourist trap and things like that, but we don't need to stop there. What we need to do is we just need to take people to have, dinner at Sugar, or to have dinner at White House, at White Beach, or have dinner in, even Vijaya, and what you see is the real thing. So, it's really, this is one where you want to avoid, that sort of minor tourist trap that is, look at the stilt fishermen that are there posing for you. It's not necessary. So we have our way around that. And this is the coastline. You have here Cape Weligama. Many of you are familiar with Cape Weligama. And some of the villas, there's a number of modern villas on the coastline as well. This is a villa called Selandiva. And so that leads me to the next story, and where two more to go. This story is the story of cinnamon. It's the story of cinnamon, because without cinnamon, you don't quite contextualize the south of Sri Lanka in a way that is meaningful. It's important to understand what actually happened here. And in a nutshell, it was that the Portuguese arrived in the beginning of the 16th century and found that there was cinnamon growing, and it was eureka, because from that moment on, they set up shop very, very quickly, and they started trading cinnamon, which was enormously profitable. And 150 years went by, and during that time, they set themselves up around Sri Lanka, and they set little forts up. Then came the Dutch, who had a commercial interest all through Asia, and they looked at the trade and they thought, we want this cinnamon trade. So they organized a battle here, where you see this picture they fought the Portuguese and they took over the fort. And then for another 150 years, the Dutch were in Ceylon, and they built quite a number of other forts, and they traded cinnamon. I always say that anybody that is coming from Holland, or anybody that's been to Holland or Belgium, and all of the city centers, from Amsterdam to Rotterdam to Utrecht to Antwerp, Bruges, etc., are beautiful, and and a lot of it is 17th century wealth, that old Dutch wealth, that comes from those times. And yeah, I mean, and so there is a connection with Sri Lanka and also with Indonesia, obviously, but it was the spice trade, that played such an important role in the Dutch economy. And so it's in order to understand where all of that, come to Sri Lanka and take a look at the cinnamon plantation and look at what happened here, because without the cinnamon, it wouldn't, wouldn't have happened to that degree, I presume. So this is these are some pictures of some of the hotels. The Aman, I just showed you the Aman. This is the Fort Bazaar. So the fort has, 460 homes, I think, of which 60, 70, 80 are now owned by foreigners and have turned into small little boutique hotels and things. But the majority of the villas of the houses in the fort are still owned by the locals. That's why it's like candy. It's a microcosmos of Sri Lanka's ethnicities and cultures. And you have all the different, you have the mosque, and you have the temple, and you have the old Dutch Reformed church there and things like that. And all of that infrastructure and all of that effort was made because cinnamon is so lucrative. So we recommend sending people to Galle and letting them stay here for a few days. Combine it with a visit to, if it's not a visit to a cinnamon plantation, at least some sort of sense of cinnamon. Buy some cinnamon to take with you, or have a cinnamon infused, lemonade or lunch or something. And just get your head around cinnamon. There's also a lot of pepper as well, I have to say, and cardamom and so many other spices. This is one of my favorite experiences in the fort, which is to go and spend a little bit of time with Janaka, and he's an artist and a mask painter, and it's great. And it's also one which is going to be very popular with the kids, and for the parents it's going to be even better, because the kids are very entertained while they're painting a mask, and mummy can go and have a coffee somewhere, and that sort of thing is what's going on. So it's really great. I would definitely recommend that experience. Other things that you can do from the fort, from Galle in that area, the whale watching. Some people ask, okay, so can we see whales in Sri Lanka? Yes, there's whales in Sri Lanka all year round. The only problem is that when the sea's a little rough, the boats don't go out to see them because it's too rough. So whales, the season, if you like, in the southern coast is November, December, well, let's say December, January, February, March, and then in the East Coast, it's in the opposite time of the year, June, July, August, September. So here we go, the cinnamon experience, the biking, and there's some really lovely culinary experiences in the South as well. You have your traditional rice and curry, but then you have things like this. That Henrietta at White House makes these hoppers, which we love, which she kind of, she's quite innovative in that respect, and you make your own hopper, and she does it really well. This is a traditional rice and curry. And this is a traditional rice and curry with, the red rice. Sri Lanka has 65 different types of rices, red rices, organic red rices. Please, let's all promote organic red rice as opposed to the non-organic, version, because there's all sorts of issues with pesticides and insecticides and all of this stuff. Sustainability really kicks in here in the sense that it has a part to play. Okay, so two more. Sorry, I'm extending myself a little bit. Hope you don't mind. Anyway, if anybody's bored or has anything else to do, this I repeat that this is being recorded and will be available for everybody on Friday. So two more things, two more experiences. One is, okay, let's talk about architecture and design. Sri Lanka's father of, everybody recognizes Geoffrey Bawa as the father of of modern Sri Lankan, contemporary modern tropical architecture, right? And he is because he was hugely influential. What is it about Bawa's style? His style is tropical modernism. It's known as tropical modernism. Tropical modernism is just a name, but what it is basically the idea of getting air to flow between the different rooms and spaces around the house so that we keep it cool. It's not rocket science, but it is definitely something you can do really well or not so well. The other thing about Bawa is, if you see this picture here of this little, he suddenly creates this structure, right? And if you look at the structure, it's just, why would he have a little door there on the side? Where's that door going? How does this work? This is not your typical structure. He had to put a lot of thinking into this, and he creates this sort of intrigue and mystery around his architecture, which I really, really appreciate. And the other important thing to remember is that it's not just Geoffrey Bawa. This is Anjalandran Murad and Chana Daswata. These are disciples of Bawa, and there's many more. But they are the top architects today in Sri Lanka, and the work they've done is fabulous. And there's always Bawa influences, if you like, so to speak, which is that letting that air flow between the different rooms and in the different living spaces. This is a really great example, perhaps one of the best. This is Melissa Hills, Angelandran, the architect, and you can see how beautiful this is with the aralilla trees, with the the swimming pool and the living area, and then on the other side you have the ocean. I mean, it's just really very nice. And this is Ranjana Luijares, a young modern architect, and this is Guava House, which works as a place to go to from the airport. By the way, many of you may not know that, and it's really lovely, as you can see. It's mixing a bit of the old and the new, but I really like that. Kahanda Kanda, no brainer. Everybody knows KK. Always important to bring out because of it's such iconic saffron wall. And the architect here is Bruce Feldsmith. And this is Dubu, which is a house that was partly brought over from Bali and plonked here in Sri Lanka. And I have it there, not because it's very Sri Lankan, but because it's just very beautiful. And it's one of my favorite places for honeymooners and things like that. Interior design in Sri Lanka, again, another angle, another thing to talk about in context. Rohan Jaya Cody's house in Nurelia, believe it or not. This is a wacky, really, I mean, this doesn't really do justice to the house, but it's part of the Manor House collection, and it's just very weird and wonderful. It is weird. I loved it, not because my wife felt it was just way too over the top, but there's a lot of really great interior design as well in Sri Lanka. And if you don't like it, at least it won't leave you indifferent. And to bring it down back to the village level, look at this beautiful mud hut which is at Ulpata, with the villagers having painted the hand by hand behind the bed, and a really good mattress, really lovely space. Okay, so now to end the stories, the 7 stories, the last one is really about today, is about what's happening in Sri Lanka today. And I think it's very important to address that, because most of our clients are cultivated, educated people that want to know, and they're going to have questions about what happened during the war, what's happening now, what is happening with this country economically, politically, socially, in the 21st century. Where is it going? What's happening with China, India? What role does Sri Lanka see for itself in the 21st century as we move forward? And let's talk about the recent past as well. One of the most interesting places to open up that discussion in context is Colombo, because Colombo is the capital city, right? And the capital city of the country is really where you can take the pulse of the nation in terms of seeing what people, how they dress, how they, how they get around, what the traffic is like, what the construction is like. And so we do recommend coming to Colombo. The only thing is that now you have this wonderful highway that circumvents it. So you don't actually need to stop in Colombo if you don't want to. You can go from Galle to the airport in 1 hour and 45 minutes. But, hey, if you have the time, stop in Colombo. Although, if you don't, then hey ho, right now we have this wonderful highway that takes you all the way to Yala, by the way, which is quite extraordinary. And for anybody interested to know, it takes 1 hour and a half to Yala now from Galle. It used to take 4. So there we go. But in Colombo, you can see here, the old quarter. I mean, okay, maybe it's not most COVID-friendly place right now, but it's the hustle and bustle of the market in Colombo, and then and again where real food is, where the real deal is, because now it's really a city of contrasts of new and old. It's a little bit like okay, I'm gonna say I don't want to say Bangkok, because actually I think Colombo is much prettier than Bangkok, to tell you the truth. Colombo has an old historical center and has actually pedestrian, it's like people can actually walk on the streets, and it doesn't have like thousands of cables all over the place and so on and so forth. As much as I love Thailand, don't get me wrong, but it is that contrast of new and old that you're going to get in Colombo much more so than ever before, because there's a lot of high rises coming up and stuff. And there's some wonderful characters. This is Anoma. This is a painter who's a very good friend as well, and she's been in, through everything here. So different to Raju, has her feet more on the ground, so to speak. But very interesting lady to go and have tea with, and lives in the center of Colombo. And the hotels, guys, the hotels. This is the residence. This is Tintagel. This is Manumpati. You don't need to stay in these big, large hotels. You don't need to stay in the huge high rises. There's plenty of beautiful accommodation in Colombo, of the oldie worldy kind of style. If you want to keep the theme going, I mean, if you want to send people to a posh 400 room property, you have them in Colombo. But now I would say let's keep it small and sweet. And also now in the COVID situation now, the good thing about Sri Lanka is that you're staying in small places all the time, so it's not like these big crowded hotels. Having said that, the Goldface Hotel here would be the only, I'd say, exception in that respect, because the Goldface Hotel is really one of the oldest hotels in Asia, and it's in a really beautiful location overlooking the Indian Ocean. Great place to go and have a cup of tea in the evening, or a gin tonic. The service is not really great, but it's still worth staying there, and forgiving any minor imperfections, but just because it has so much meaning. Okay, so I'm going to move over to the East Coast very, very quickly, and we'll go through this reasonably fast. Trincomalee. Okay, so Trinco. Again, in context, what's the story here? Look at this harbor right now. Look at this picture. Look at the bottom of the slide here, and you can see this beautiful beach, which there's nothing on it. This is a little bit like Sydney Harbor would have been, 200 years ago. There's just not much going on here, but it's a beautiful harbor with a lot of little coves and things like that. In context, it is in a way what Pearl Harbor was to the Americans in the Second World War. That's what it was to the British, insofar as for the Pacific command of the Pacific Ocean. This was where they kept all their aircraft carriers and their destroyers and things. And the Japanese did bomb Trincomalee a number of times, and in fact they sank the HMS Hermes and a destroyer just off the coast of Trinco. So there's a lot of history here, and you can go and see some of the old barracks and some of that old sort of World War II story. But it has that, and then it has beyond that, it actually was a Dutch fort, proper, and it's actually a very beautiful fort, but it's empty. There's not much there. There's a few old buildings, but all the barracks, military on them. But it's anyway worth visiting, and it also has one of the most important pilgrimage sites for Hindus in Sri Lanka, which is the Kovil, and then it has a very important Buddhist temple as well. So it's well worth sort of exploring it. And I would say that even though we're talking beach here, because most people just go to the beach and think of it as the beach, but no, come into Trinco and just go for a stroll around town, visit the fort, and tap into that historical side of the city. This is a picture of Pigeon Island, which is, the snorkeling sort of, place there. As you can see, a little bit busy, but yeah, that there's actually very good snorkeling in the area. And this is a picture of Jungle Beach, which is one of our favorite hotels there. Let's go down to Pasikuda. This is Uga Bay, one of our favorite hotels there. Look at the beach. I mean, this is just beautiful. And bear in mind, we have 6 or 7 catamarans around the island, and these catamarans can be used for sunset cruises and things like that. They belong to a company called Sri Lanka, and one is permanently stationed here in Pasikuda Bay. And look at the beautiful. Look at the beach. I mean, you can't beat it. But it's really very much just beach, I'd say. There's a nice bike ride that you can do. I've done it, and I love it. And so, but other than that, it's a place to come and relax more than anything else. Aragon Bay. Look at this picture of Aragon Bay. Aragon Bay's break. It looks a little bit like Byron Bay in Australia. It has that sort of that sort of like the lay of the land, and you've got this, you've got these, it's the wave just goes on and on and on. Here you have another great picture of it, and I mean, surfing in Sri Lanka is a big deal now. It used to be sort of like off the beaten path kind of place to go surfing, but now in the east and the west coast, there's surfing all year round, and people love it. Okay, so we're up in Jaffna now. This is the Dutch fort in Jaffna. Now, Freek must be thinking this is, Hilversum, or it's like, but it's not. It's actually Sri Lanka, but look how amazing it is. It's just perfect. It's just, they couldn't have done it more. I mean, it's just. The only thing is that it's empty. If you look inside, there's nothing there. Why? Because during the war they bombed, it all out. So that's the catch. But it is well worth visiting. And that's the Jaffna Fort, very important historical site in Sri Lanka. And this is Hammond Hill prison, which was an old prison, which again, we can take clients there. To have a look at it. And in fact, the Navy used to have 2 rooms they used to rent out there, but we can organize a little picnic there. Well worth seeing. There's quite a lot of islands in the area. And in Jaffna, it's really still very off the beaten path. It's a bit of a mix of India and Sri Lanka, and it's way more rural than other parts of Sri Lanka. And people, but it has its own culture and its own thing. We're trying to emphasize that side of Jaffna and take people to see the villager, if you like, and the market, and obviously some of the most impressive Hindu temples there are in Sri Lanka. And this is our Jaffna crab curry, which is just to die for. It's very, very different to the curries in the south or in other places. We have a whole experience of learning how to make a Jaffna curry even in Colombo. But yeah, my mouth is watering just seeing that right now. And this all sort of comes together, if you like, into an itinerary that looks a little bit like this, with extensions to the East Coast. And there's also, this is your classic itinerary, but there's also just, different types of them that would incorporate the East Coast or with extensions. And that's, that's coming to the end now. That's pretty much it. I mean, let's look at this and see. This is the number of days that you would spend in the different locations, just to show you an idea, like 2 or 3 days in the Cultural Triangle, 1 or 2 days in Kandy, 2 or 3 days in the tea country. Some of you might like to combine it with the Maldives. Some of you might like to skip Yala because you might have your own reasons for that. Clients might have been to some of the top African safaris. They may not need to. They might not want to tick that box. And these are the travel times, for the classic itinerary. I think some of you have already seen these slides, but these are the travel times. And as you can see, 5 hours is still quite a long way to go by road. So if you want to cut that short, what you do is you take the seaplane. So we definitely recommend taking the seaplane, and it brings it down to half an hour. And that's it from me. So, and I think I way overextended myself. It was actually 1 hour on the dot. I was trying to make it 45 minutes, but anyway, if anybody has any questions, let me know, and I will answer them. You can put them on the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. Is there anybody still here? Is the question. I'll stop recording.